Right now, we're going to talk about a new study that was conducted jointly by the McGill University here in Montreal, and of course, and Maastricht University, which is in the Netherlands. And joining us now is Dr. Vincent Paquin. Dr. Paquin is an assistant professor at McGill in the psychiatry department and also a psychiatrist at the Jewish General Hospital. This study, Dr. Paquin, showed that gamers, young gamers, are at a higher risk of mental health problems.
Hello, yes. Thank you for having me. This study focused specifically on what we call problematic gaming. Mm-hmm. And I want to distinguish that from just gaming because in our study, actually, we looked at the mental health of a large cohort of young gamers. So they were all 12 years old at the beginning of the study, and they all played video games. And what we found is that the amount of gaming in itself, the number of hours, the screen time, was not associated with mental health problems. What seemed to confer risk was this notion of problematic gaming, which means losing control on the amount of gaming. So this kind of difficulty with controlling, setting limits on how much time you spend on video games.
So, in other words, these are children who would put aside things like relationships or schoolwork or something like that in order to continue playing their games.
That's right. So, the one of the signs of problematic gaming is that gaming starts to take precedence. It takes place at the detriment of other activities and commitments that are important for a person's well-being and functioning. So that includes, as you said, relationships. That can include schoolwork. For adults, that includes work. And problematic gaming becomes, because of those impacts, it becomes a source of distress for the person. And in our study, we saw that it could lead to more mental health problems even after a year.
So these children or young adults perhaps even realize that there's a problem. They realize that they're spending too much time doing it, but they find there's nothing they can do about that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's a mix of multiple factors because we have to ask the question, what is it that draws young people to play video games in the first place? It's important to keep in mind that for most people, video games are not a cause of mental health problems. They are a leisure activity that can bring positive experiences of creativity, agency, teamwork, and so on. But in some situations, people turn to games to escape difficult experiences that they are going through in their lives. They turn to games to break isolation. They turn to games just to distract themselves. And in those situations, there is a risk that the place of video games grows to the expense of other important factors that need to be nurtured to protect the person's mental health.
Now, you said that there were about 6,000 individuals who took part in this study. How many of those percentage, or what was the number of those who showed signs of actual problematic gaming?
In our study, we looked at it on a gradient, on a spectrum. So we didn't make a distinction between having or not having problematic gaming, but we looked at whether having a higher level, having more symptoms, was a risk factor for mental health problems. But generally, what we see when we measure the presence of problematic gaming in the population is that it can affect about 3 or 4%. But it's a relatively new concept, and there is a bit of controversy on how exactly we can distinguish problematic gaming from non-problematic gaming, because in some situations, people are just passionate about games, and they will spend more time than the average person playing video games, maybe because many of their friends are also on those games, and it's a way of staying in touch with them. And in those situations, then gaming is not necessarily a sign of a mental health problem. So we have to be careful about making that distinction, but all this to say that the less control the person experiences over their gaming and the more impact they see on their personal life, then the higher the suspicion is that there is a form of problematic gaming.
Now, was there any result in particular from this study that sort of took you aback, that surprised you a bit when you saw the results?
Well, what surprised me the most was the protective impact, the beneficial impact of having a supportive environment. Because we often focus on risks and problems, but ultimately, if we want to help promote the mental health of young people, including young gamers, we also have to think about things that can be helpful and that can reduce problems. And what we saw in our study is that the support from the family and the school environment in particular were helpful in reducing the risk of problematic gaming. So among all those 6,000 young gamers, those whose parents were more involved and available and monitoring their whereabouts, and those who were in schools where they felt safer and they had more opportunities to participate in activities and to receive positive feedback and so on, they were less likely to develop problematic gaming of their interest in gaming. Which points to a way of protecting the mental health of young people who play video games, who represent about half of young people, because video games are very popular across ages.
So what should a parent be looking for? What should they be doing if they think their child may be involved in problematic gaming?
The three things. The first thing is to try to better understand the motivations that the person has for gaming. What is it that draws them to spending more time on video games? Second, try to set limits and rules, and ideally set them in collaboration with the young person. For example, maybe agree on not playing video games in the bedroom at night, or not use a screen device during mealtime. And third, if you have concerns that the young person might be addicted to video games, seek help. You can consult your family doctor or your local CLSC, and there are services that are available to support you with that.
That's comforting to know. Just before I let you go, were there any differences that you noticed between gender? Were boys and girls pretty much the same in the results, or were there differences down the gender line?
In our study, we didn't see differences related to gender, except that on average, boys tended to spend more time on video games. Mm-hmm. But once we account for that, the risk of problematic gaming is not different between girls and boys. So if you have the same amount of time spent on games, then the problematic gaming is no different.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Doctor. That's a fascinating insight to that study, and thank you for taking the time this afternoon to share it with us.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.